Good afternoon, everybody. It is an honor and pleasure to be here today with all of you. With such a great view and perspective on the Mediterranean cooperation. We are slightly late, to say the least, and we will keep this panel very short. Initially, it was foreseen, to have a couple of rounds of questions. We will have only one round of questions with our panelists, and we will try to focus on our key objectives that are the main reasons to have you here today concerning synergies and complementarities. First of all, our panelists will help us in getting a wider view on the main initiatives ongoing at Mediterranean Sea Basin level. On the other hand, we have a very practical reason to have you here, because the new application form clearly highlights the need to specify synergies and complementarities. So it's no longer a question of describing what you have in mind, your wishful thinking about synergies and complementarities. It's a question of providing clear information that can make the difference. You know that our program is extremely competitive. We had a success rate of around 5% in the past programming period. This means that only one project out of 20 will reach the final stage of the implementation. If you want to make the difference, a good way to start with is to consider synergies and complementarities. So please pay attention to what our panelists are going to say. And I would like to first introduce, on my right, Patrizia Busolini from the INTERREG MED Programme. Then we have, on the other side, a representative from UNEP MAP. You know this very important initiative. The United Nations are here represented by Gaetano, Leone. Then, on the other side of the table, we have Christofilopoulos, Epaminondas, who is representing here. We heard early this morning that we have to turn our borders into new horizons. Horizon is here, is the big brother of all cooperation programs. We will have a look also into more details as far as the national programs, the bilateral programs are concerned, with Gianandrea Villa from the delegation, the European Union delegation in Beirut. So let's go straight to the point with Patrizia with this question about the state of play of the MED program 2014-2020. And also I would like to ask you, what do you see the greatest potential for synergies and complementarities, having considered our main priorities? The floor is yours.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Luca. First of all, I would like to thank on behalf of the INTERREG MED Programme, to thank the managing authority of the ENI-CBC program for inviting us to contribute to this panel. I will briefly give you some insights on the state of the art of the current INTERREG MED program. As I guess many of you already know, the INTERREG MED program covers the coastal area of 10 EU Mediterranean member states and 3 countries from EIP area, it is to say Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina and Montenegro. The main objective of the program is to support economic and social development through the protection of the natural resources and to support social integration. This will be done basically through 3 thematic axes, focusing innovation, energy and environment, and through a 4th priority axis, focusing the support to the national and regional authorities to the governance efforts in the Mediterranean to tackle common challenges and opportunities as well. So the program has launched past year the 2 initial calls, which have now been, the programs have been selected, has already selected 69 projects, and it has programmed nearly 58% of the total program budget on the three thematic axes. So I just would like to give you the main topics on which, by axis, on which the projects have been approved. For innovation, there have been projects approved in maritime security, biotechnologies, innovation applied to specific sectors, circular economy, clusters of maritime renewable energies, for example. On energies, on urban sustainable development, biomass chain, nearly zero energy buildings, and innovative financial schemes. On environment, on alternative tourism strategies, sustainable tourism activities through integrated coastal zone management, support governance in fishing sector, maritime litter, and management and networking of Mediterranean protected areas and wetlands. What is upcoming in 2017? Two main important things. The first important thing that you might be very interested in is that by the end of January next year, the third call will be open. It will be focusing specifically integrated projects, which is a new concept the program have developed. The main feature of the integrated projects is that they involve both study, testing, and capitalizing activities, and they can last 48 months, so it's a very long period to develop the projects. And the partnership, it's a multifunctional and multi-level partnership. These are the main features. And the budget can be between 3 million and 6 million euro. The second aspect of 2017 is that the platform project of the Axis for Governance will be launched. This governance platform is a governance platform among national and regional authorities of the participating states of the INTERREG MED Programme in order to create a stable dialogue, a stable liaising and exchanging to try to define and contribute to support the main challenges and opportunities in the Mediterranean, as I explained you before. So this was to give you a brief overview where we are now with the MED program. Now, if we consider to follow up with the second question Luca mentioned, where do we see synergies and complementarity can be developed? With reference to the two overarching objectives of the ENI CBC program, to say promote economic and social development and addressing the environmental challenges, for sure, under the innovation axis of MED program and under axis 3, in particular under the thematic priority coastal and maritime tourism, there are a lot of synergy and evident synergy that can be made, in particular in terms of strengthening and supporting Euro-Mediterranean networks, clustering, consortia and value chain on traditional and non-traditional sector, sustainable tourism initiatives, support to research and innovation, and so on. In terms of environmental challenges, also there are a lot of synergies and complementarities that should not be too complicated to develop in terms of renewable energy, energy efficiency, integrated coastal and zone management as a methodology to plan and manage the human activities in the fragile coastal area of the Mediterranean. So this is very clear area sector where complementarities and synergies can be developed. In addition, there are other sectors that are not directly tackled by the INTERREG MED program, but where complementarities can be developed as well, and I am referring, for example, to social inclusion aspects. So this is less direct, but I believe also in this aspect some complementarities can be found.
Thank you very much, Patrizia. I think it's extremely useful to have a look at what has been implemented already by the projects tested on the European shore, because I mean, there are very good ideas that can be shared also with the Southern Mediterranean countries, and that can pave the way for this kind of very fruitful exchanges that we expect from the new generation. We are asking now Nondas about this very innovative platform, I mean, for international cooperation that is now, let's say, getting quite old. I mean, the Horizon 2020 is coming outside several experiences in the framework of the framework research programs. I would like to ask you, what is the state of play now of the Horizon 2020s? And once again, if you see synergies and complementarities as feasible compared to what we heard this morning in the first session.
Thank you, Luca. I understand that we are the last panel, we are the last obstacle between the lunch break, and so we really have to be fast, and I'll be as fast as possible. So let me very quickly thank you. I think this is a wonderful event, and it's a very complex event, so it's very smooth and really interesting for, I believe, for everybody. Now, I understand that maybe a lot of you are aware about Horizon 2020, but I will just give a very few main topics, main things about Horizon 2020, what makes Horizon a different program, and I would say that Horizon 2020 is the main instrument of European Commission to support excellence. Excellence in innovation, excellence in research, and also the main instrument to solve and address challenges, environmental, medical, whatever challenges we find on a global or European level. So this is one main thing. We are focusing on a European level. Very few things you will find in Horizon 2020 that have a very regional or regional interest. Now, in terms of the implementation of the program, Horizon 2020 now is, it has a similar, let's say, nature. So we have like a biannual work programs. Now we are finishing the work program, which is for 2016-2017. So we're going to have some few remaining calls for this work program. And then what is going to happen is by the summer, summer 2017, we're going to have the final work program for the final 3 years of Horizon, and for 2018, 2019, 2020. So in this work program, you will find all of the remaining topics and interesting areas to collaborate. In terms of the Mediterranean area, I must say that Horizon, of course, this is the main nature of the project, of the program, is open to everybody. So everybody can participate and receive funding. Only a few countries that are, let's say, developed countries like USA or Canada or Australia do not receive funding. And of course, there are some exceptions with countries with political issues like North Korea that are not allowed to participate. So it's open to all the Mediterranean countries. All Mediterranean countries can participate in all the activities of Horizon and receive funding. So this is one thing you should keep in mind. The second thing is, from time to time, you can find some regional calls. For example, now there are 3 calls that are specifically focusing on the Mediterranean area, and one is related with the geopolitics. The other one is related with creating a science-based platform about fisheries, and the third one is related with again with the fish area and how to improve management tools. So all these 3 topics are focusing on the Mediterranean, and they are open. The deadline is on February. There is going to be one more call with a deadline in August that is focusing in the area of security. And then we're going to wait for the next work program to see what else will be inside these final 3 years. No, regarding complementarity, And this is a very interesting thing because this is what we're trying to do also in the office. Not every program is for everyone, and not all the activities are for every idea. So this is what we're trying to do, is we try to guide the companies, the organizations, the NGOs to find the right program. So Horizon is mostly focusing on excellence, is mostly focusing on let's say, on more, let's say, on bigger problems. But we have the option and we have the capability to use this MED program to work more on our problems. We can focus more on capacity building, that this is something that we miss in both sides of this sea. Greece, Italy, Spain, but also the countries from the other side, we have similar problems in increasing our capacity, be able to compete better in the global market. So this is one tool we can use, and we can help us raise our capacity and then be able to compete better on a global level. The other thing is that we can discuss and we can, from a bottom up, as I understand, the program is quite flexible, so there are some basic topics or general directions, but then we can suggest very specific activities. And this is something that Horizon is missing. Horizon has a very specific description of what they are expecting. So we have the flexibility to propose specific things that are of our interest, specific environmental problems, specific tools, for example, to increase, let's say, entrepreneurship between immigrants or whatever, things that are of our interest. So this is what we are trying to do as an office, to find and suggest the special opportunities that exist through this program, and they are not good for Horizon.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nanda. It's crystal clear that there is room for SMEs are at the very core center of our future strategy. So especially under the thematic objective on business and development, research, education, training, but also on social inclusion. I think there is much room for this kind of public-private cooperation. I feel much better now knowing that North Korea is not part of your program. And I would like to quickly change our perspective, because we are really flying high with Horizon, with very ambitious goals, but we like to stay really grounded and look at what the national delegation, the EU delegations are doing on the field. I leave the floor to Gianandrea Villa to have an idea of what the delegation are doing, especially in Beirut. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luca. I promise I will be quick. Well, usually when you start with this sentence, it's very dangerous. But I will, in any case. Let me allow to say, first of all, one sentence covering the past, not the future. As an old member of the team of the unit in Brussels who conceived the first idea of the first CBC MED during the period 2004-2005, I can assure you that despite its initial ambition, talking about the first CBC MED, it was difficult to imagine all concrete and tangible results that took place during the following 8-9 years. Having said that, as Luca said, I'm here on behalf of the EU delegation, of a EU delegation. In my case, I'm working in Lebanon. And believe me, I mean, working in a European Union delegation means that our work is not exactly the same than our colleagues in headquarters. First of all, we are responsible for all the bilateral programs, which means that we manage either directly or in a non-direct management through a governmental or an international agencies, or directly through competent ministries. And at the same time, we represent somehow the EU counterpart at local level. In other words, it means that we are seen somehow like the ones who represent the EU funds as well, somehow. This is very important. We are the counterpart over there. Having said that, it is clear that in this framework, the European Union, and I'm talking about Lebanon now, has a long track record in supporting local authorities and civil society organizations. Just to give you a simple example, during the last 8 years, we have supported actions in all the governorates, in 21 departments on 24, and in more than 500 municipalities on 1,000. Imagine that no later than 2 months ago, the European Council and the government of Lebanon agreed on the partnership priorities. These partnership priorities, as it has been said by my friend Lamia Chamas, is composed by 4 main priorities. And I would say that 3 of them are important for CBC Med. Well, beyond the security and countering terrorism, you have the democracy and the rule of law, which means that of course, through the support of different non-state actors, generally speaking, you can support democracy, rule of law, and good governance actions. Then you have the migration and the mobility. And then, last but not least, you have a micro-priority, which is called fostering growth and job opportunities. This macro-priority is the most important for CBC Med because you can foster synergies and complementarities. First of all, because this big micro-priority is composed by 2 sub-priorities. One is, for the first one, support to local authorities and society. This means that we will dialogue between the central and the local level, as well as between the local authorities, the civil society, and the private sector for a socio-economic development and the promotion of a more sustainable, I would say, local development structured dialogue. At the same time, we will improve basic service delivery, in particular public health system, healthcare for vulnerable groups, but also investment in municipal infrastructure projects such as wastewater, solid waste management, and transport. And then we will promote local authorities for planning to revitalize local economy with a focus in the private sector development with potential higher multiplier effects for employment. The second sub-priority is called water and energy. While it goes without saying, energy supply represents one of the daily challenges in Middle East and in Lebanon. This is why today initiatives contributing to energy savings and to the generation of electricity from renewable energy sources are so important. Within this framework, the EU environmental policy will also be enhanced through a decentralized approach on water, solid waste, and natural resources conservation. Well, all these priorities I briefly mentioned will have to be defined in thematic bilateral programs to be implemented, as I said, via a direct or indirect management. In some specific cases, of course, through the local call for proposals, it will be directly the local authorities or the civil society organization who will manage the different projects. Well, for the first part, I would stop here as the priority and then the state of play, but allow me just a last word saying that even if the trend coming from the European Union is to support a big-scale budget project in the future, and I completely understand, of course, allow me to say that CBC projects, which are small-scale budget projects, are so important, and this is the proof, in the sense that CBC projects usually are able to achieve at least one or even more objectives of a classic multi-annual action document of whichever country of the neighborhood region. You can call it as support to local authorities. You can call it support to civil society. You can call it support to bodies governed by public law. But in any case, we are talking about priorities for the European Union. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Gianandrea. By listening to your intervention, I can easily recall the main features of this program. Is one of a kind. We combine, let's say, the ambitions of the Horizon 2020 with this approach focused on the institutional capacity building, and the people-to-people cooperation is something that we cannot never left behind. It was extremely, let's say, inspiring to hear that you are tackling very delicate issues like the ones you mentioned, water and energy. And I think that everyone who is thinking about a project proposal should read at least once the Mediterranean Strategy for Sustainable Development prepared by UNEP MAP. I will ask Gaetano to give a great strategy, great document. It should be one of.
Thank you very much, Luca, and thank you to Director Catte for having me here today. And I'm Gaetano Leone, as Luca said. I represent here the United Nations Environment Programme and its Secretariat of the Mediterranean Action Plan and Barcelona Convention. 40 years ago, this was, don't worry, I'm not going to summarize 40 years of history, but just to tell you that we celebrate this year 40 years of existence as the only legally binding UN treaty that exists in the region. And this gives us a particular political relevance, but also strategic, and also actual implementation of activities in this region. So on one side, we do prepare instruments that are legally binding when ratified by their governments and become national legislation. And they are protocols, and we have them in most of the areas that are considered as priorities of the next phase of the CBC, but also decisions that are taken every 2 years. And our contracting parties are 21 riparian countries of the Mediterranean and the European Union. So in addition to this, there is concrete action. I just want to give you one example. This month, we complete the removal of more than 900 tons of pollutants in 3 countries, Turkey, Egypt, and Bosnia-Herzegovina, and we help with, or rather, we facilitate the disposal of this huge amount of pollutants that would otherwise probably somehow have an impact on the environment of the Mediterranean and the coastal region. So we work through 6 regional activity centers that are our implementing arms on sustainable consumption and production, on biodiversity, on ICZM, as you mentioned before. It was mentioned before introducing the CBC program. Centers, one at least, is represented in this room and has been active in the previous phase, that certainly can be very helpful in joining hands in presenting project proposals. We have a long history of collaboration with the European Commission. We have, with the European Commission, introduced the ecosystem approach in the region. We are working with the Commission on marine litter. We are working on waste. We have several already open channels that can be useful both in terms of experience and in terms of actual political relevance in preparing and submitting your proposals in response to the CBC call. Luca mentioned the strategy is available for those of you who are interested outside in a number of copies. It's also on our website, unepmap.org. It's a strategy that looks at the next 10 years on the basis of some premises that we share with the CBC. The Mediterranean is uniquely rich and vulnerable, and it's uniquely under pressure from human activities. And it's also one region where livelihoods is most depending on natural resources of the basin. So with these premises, obviously, we must work for sustainable development. We must ensure that the growth, the development of our region is not going to destroy, like the goose with the golden eggs, destroy the source of our life and livelihoods in the Mediterranean. So one last thing that I wanted to mention, where we can be joining hands with the CBC program, is the fact that we also do resource mobilization. Last month, the Global Environment Facility of the United Nations and World Bank has approved a program program for our implementation for $42 million for the next, for a duration of 3 years starting in 2017-18. This is a very interesting program. It includes 2 European investment banks that will bring co-financing for $800 million, specifically focusing on waste, but also on biodiversity and on international waters. So I certainly think that these 2 programs can be complementary and provide the co-financing to each other that is needed in developing the project proposals that you will submit. And finally, I want to say that next year is really the year of the Mediterranean. We are having Malta as president of the EU. We are having Malta hosting the Our Oceans Conference. We're having Italy president of the G7. I think this gives us huge opportunities, and we are ready to collaborate with you the way we collaborate already with Horizon 2020 and with establishing collaboration thanks to Patrizia with the INTERREG MED program. And I look forward to working with all of you in the months to come. So thank you very much, Luca.
Thank you very much, Gaetano. I think we have already in mind the images of the climate change impact in our video that were really striking. And I thank you very much for this contribution, because you clearly highlighted how important are also the data. Because in this strategy, you will not find long policy paper. I mean, you will really get the idea of the state of play of the interventions and also on the major threat at the Mediterranean Sea Basin level. So given the limited amount of resources available, I know that we create an added value, but given the limited amount of resources, we have really to focus on few priorities. And we did an effort, as was explained by Federico before, to concentrate more and more on few expected results indicators. We still need tools, we still need opportunities to cooperate more. And one of the tools that is now brand new, is quite, let's say, a success story, as for now, is the Axis 4 of the ETC MED program. I would like to ask Patrizia to briefly highlight the main features of this Axis 4.
Thank you, Luca. I will be very brief. But I think it can be interesting for you to know that indeed the INTERREG MED program in this new programming period has thought to invest in this cross-cutting axis on governance very concretely. And it is, we are planning, and it should be launched in June next year, May, June next year, this governance platform, which is a concrete project among national and regional authorities of the INTERREG MED countries, in order to support the exchange and the dialogue at Mediterranean level, and to give a contribution as much as possible to the governance efforts already active in the Mediterranean. So in this sense, and in terms, again, of developing synergies and complementarities, there is a specific task which is related to liaising, and this is where we hope we will be able to develop and to strengthen the efforts that were already started in previous programming period in terms of exchange of information with the programs active in the Mediterranean, the CBC MED program, and we are also in contact with the UNEP map, of course, in the same terms, because as Gaetano mentioned, the Mediterranean strategy on sustainable development is one of the chief strategies and frameworks in the Mediterranean. Therefore, we need to develop complementarities and synergies together with the other dynamics and frameworks active in the Mediterranean. The other element I would like to stress for this Axis 4 platform is to liaise with just what Luca just mentioned. It is to say the data. This governance is an evidence-based governance platform. It is to say that we will use the data, the results, produced by the projects, not only by the projects developed by the INTERREG MED program, but also those produced by the ENI-CBC program, by the other territorial cooperation programs in the Mediterranean, and by the other initiatives and programs and so on, in order to be able to support the policy making somehow, the policy making and the decision taking, also with this evidence coming from the programs, from the projects. So there we hope we can contribute concretely in terms of developing synergies and complementarities, even though if we are perfectly aware it's not evident, it's not easy, but we hope with this platform we can contribute.
Okay. Thank you very much, Patrizia. I think we are getting ready for lunch. I mean, we have a surprise. I don't know if we are able to show the result of our small consultation, because you have received, let's say, a short questionnaire, because, as you know, we place the utmost attention to your participation, and we asked you what you consider as the most important factor, the most important priority to reinforce synergies and complementarities among Mediterranean projects initiatives. The first one was improving schemes for mobility and sharing. The second was defining new institutional settings at national level. The third one was increasing internal organization effectiveness. We will comment on these results later on when we will have time to interact and work together. I would like to kindly ask you to take all your stuff, your bags with you, because you will find a brand new room where we can keep on cooperating together after lunch. Thank you very much for your attention.